Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat or Ashley, and today we're going over a patron requested deck. This is Vazi Key Negotiator, and Druby was looking for a targeted land destruction deck to force opponents to use the treasure tokens from our commander, and also a treasure token value that can come with sacrificing them, etc. But first let's talk about Vazi real quick. So for 2 black, red, and green, it's a 3/3 human advisor with haste. We can tap Vazi and target opponent creates X treasure tokens, where X is the number of treasure tokens we created this turn. And it also says whenever an opponent casts a spell or activates an ability, if mana from a treasure token was spent to cast it or activate it, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and we also get to draw a card. So we can make our creatures bigger or someone else's, and most importantly, we're drawing cards from giving other people mana. So our commander is very important to this whole strategy because that's the only way we're getting treasure tokens to our opponents consistently. So we can protect our commander with cards like Alpha Authority and Mirror Shield. These are great budget ways to protect our commander, especially for 2 mana and 2 to equip with Mirror Shield. This is going to give our commander hexproof, and what's nice about Alpha Authority, it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, and assuming we put those +1/+1 counters on our commander, it's going to be hard for only 1 creature to block a huge commander of ours. Let's talk about the ramp in the deck. So as for the artifacts, we have Commander Sphere, Golgari Signet, Gruul Signet, and Rakdos Signet. The 1 extra mana we're getting from these is going to help us in the future turns, hopefully cast our commander a little bit sooner, and as well as the rest of our spells. We have Talisman of Resilience. It's very affordable right now for 41 cents, and it can tap for a colorless, and if we happen to want black or green mana, it will deal 1 damage to us, which is perfectly fine. As for the non-artifact ramp spells, we have Cultivate, Rampant Growth, and Harrow. So Cultivate and Rampant Growth get us a basic land to our battlefield tapped, while Cultivate gets us another basic to our hand. So if we didn't play a land that turn, we can play that one. And Harrow lets us sack a land in addition to casting the spell, and then we get 2 basics on the battlefield. And what's nice is that they are not tapped. And the last card I want to talk about for ramp is Glittering Stockpile. I like this one because we can tap it for a red, and then we also put a stash counter on this card. We can later tap it, sacrifice it, and get X mana of any 1 color, where X is the number of stash counters on this card. It's a really sweet one. Next, we're talking about removal. Not everybody's favorite to talk about, but there's only 5 of them, and I'll talk about why in a second. But we have Cross and Grip, Putrefy, Terminate, and Return to Nature. These can destroy a creature, artifact, enchantment, and specifically with Putrefy and Terminate, they can't be regenerated. Return to Nature is ultimately my favorite removal spell because for 2 mana we get 3 options. We can destroy an artifact, enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard, and it's all instant speed. The last removal spell I want to talk about is Prize Fight. So for 1 and a green, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, so we can potentially get rid of something of our opponents. And this is nice because from the +1/+1 counters we're getting from our commander, we can build up a creature of ours, potentially our commander, and kill off an opponent's creature. And we're also making a treasure token from this, so that's another way to start giving our opponents treasures. And moving on to the reason why we only have 5 removal spells is because we have land destruction, and that is individual land destruction. Druby was looking for not board wipes, so let's talk about Army Ants. We can tap this creature to sacrifice a land and destroy target land. So while this is harsh on our opponents, it's also harsh to us. We're sacrificing one of our lands, but this isn't bad because remember, we're making so many treasure tokens, this isn't going to affect us at all. And next we have Choking Sands. Destroy target non-swap land. If that land's a non-basic land, it deals 2 to that land's controller, which we don't care about. We just care about destroying our opponent's lands. Next is Cleansing Wildfire. We can destroy a land. Its controller can look for a basic land put on the battlefield tapped. We also get to draw a card. So this could be strategic if we know our opponents don't have any basic lands, and we can also target ourselves, but sadly it will replace the land we're getting rid of, which could be a very important land to them. Could be a Temple of the False God or anything that is a threat to us. Next is Destructive Flow for black, red, green. It's an enchantment at the beginning of each player's upkeep. That player sacrifices a non-basic land. This one is a little more harsh because it's going to be repeatable now, but again, with all of the treasures that we're making, I feel like this won't be too bad for us or our opponents. We're just replacing their mana with treasure tokens. Frenzied Tilling. We can destroy a land and then we get to ramp, so we'll definitely get some backlash from this one. Next is Icequake. We can destroy target land, and if it happens to be a snow-covered land, it deals 1 damage to that land's controller. Molten Rain. We destroy target land. If that land was a non-basic land, it deals 2 to that land's controller. Monvoli Acid Moss. So it destroys target land, and we get to search for a forest card and put it into play tapped. This is a really sweet one. Next is Pillage. We destroy target artifact or land, so I like the versatility here, and it also can't be regenerated. Next is Rain of Tears. We can destroy target land for 3 mana. Next is Rancid Earth. we can destroy target land. It also has threshold, which says instead destroy that land, and this deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So it could be a mini board wipe. Roiling Earth, this is destroy target land, then this deals damage to that land's controller equal to the number of land cards in that player's graveyard. Next is Stone Rain, 3 mana to destroy any 1 land. Winter's Grasp, for 3 mana, destroy target land. And last we have is Wrecking Ball. We can destroy target creature or land. It's also instant speed. So again, versatility here is very welcome in this deck. Let's move on to how we can start making some treasure tokens. And we have a lot in the deck. Let's talk about Big Score. For 3 and a red, an additional cost to casting this spell we have to discard, but we also get to draw 2 and create 2 treasure tokens, which is very helpful, and it's also instant speed, so we can do this at the end of our opponent's turn, right before ours. Next is Black Market Tycoon, and before you say there's no way I'm putting this in the deck, hear me out. For a red and a green, we get a 2/2 cat rogue. At the beginning of your upkeep, it's going to deal 2 to us for each treasure we control, and we can also tap it to create a treasure token, so it's very consistent with creating these treasure tokens. And how we can avoid this whole taking 2 for each treasure we control, just sack them all right before our upkeep if we need to, or on our opponent's end step. So that way we're not going to get hit with this, but we still have access to it for the whole turn cycle if we need to cast an instant. Next is Brass's Bounty. So we get a treasure token for each land we control, and this can be a very powerful way to give one of our opponents 7 treasures potentially, and whenever they decide to use that for a spell or ability, we get that +1/+1 counter on a creature, and we also get to draw a card. Next is Bucknard's Everfull Purse, and this is an artifact where we can pay 1, roll a d4, and create that many treasure tokens equal to the result, and the player to our right gains control of this. I'm thinking if our opponents really want to get those treasure tokens, they're going to use this, but it's possible that they're just going to leave it there because they're formulating a plan. If I get these treasure tokens, I'm going to get in a bad situation where my opponent's going to be messing with +1/+1 counters and drawing cards, but if they're a little greedy, they might pass this around and it could get back to us, which would be very sweet. Next is Glittermonger. Again, another great way to consistently get those treasure tokens. It's a mana dork. We just get a treasure token instead of a mana. Next is Goldvine Pick. This is an equipment that says the equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we create a treasure token. So we wouldn't want this on our commander because she would become tapped and then we can't use her ability as well. So if we can get this on another creature of ours and deal combat damage, this is a great card for us. Next is Horde Hauler. So for 3 and a red, it's a 5/5 vehicle with trample. Whenever this deals damage to a player, we create a treasure token for each artifact they control. This is a really sweet card, and for crew 3, we can already have our commander crew to it, but again, that taps our commander, so it's more beneficial if we use a different creature to crew this. Next is Horde Robber. So whenever this deals combat damage to a player, we create a treasure token. Hoarding Ogre. Whenever this attacks, we roll a d20. 1 through 9, we create a treasure token. 10 through 19, we create 2 treasures, and 20, we create 3. And why this is really sweet is because the next card I'm talking about makes this card even better. Let's talk about Jolene the Plunder Queen. Whenever a player attacks 1 or more of your opponents, that player creates a treasure token. If you would create a treasure token, instead create that many +1. And we can also sack 5 treasure tokens to put 5 counters on Jolene, which can help with Black Market Tycoon and not dealing us 2 damage or potentially 10 damage if we didn't sack those 5 treasures to Jolene. So this will start making other players hit each other, or at least encourage that behavior. So our opponents are slowly losing life. They get treasures that they can potentially use to cast spells or use them on abilities. We get counters, draw cards. This is a great card for the deck. Next is Agnes the Dragon's Lash. This has haste, and it says whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. We're not focused on giving our creatures haste, but if we really needed the treasure tokens, our commander also has haste, and so does Agnes. So we can create those treasure tokens, but I mostly care about Agnes becoming tapped and attacking because this can be that consistent way to create those treasure tokens, and then we can leave our commander untapped to later tap her, give our opponents treasures. Let's talk about Tempting Contract. So at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent may create a treasure token. For each opponent who does, you also create a treasure token. So if our opponents all take this deal, we get 3 treasure tokens, and that means we can tap our commander and give an opponent an additional 3 treasure tokens, and we can start doubling our treasure tokens. Next, let's talk about Zorn. So this is the same as Jolene in a sense. If we would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create that many plus an additional treasure token. So this will help get more treasure tokens for us and our opponents. So with all of the treasure tokens, I want to mention one artifact that is really going to mess with the whole game. Let's talk about Summoning Station. While it does cost 7 mana, we can tap it to put a 2/2 colorless pincher creature token into play. But it says whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard from play, you may untap Summoning Station. This is super powerful because this is not only affecting us, this is getting benefit from our opponents sacrificing the treasures that happen to be artifacts. So whenever we go to cast a 3-mana spell with 3 treasure tokens, we can sacrifice one. In response, tapping this, it will untap, and we can make a total power of 6 just from casting a spell we already were going to do. This is very powerful, and I really recommend this for your deck. Next, let's talk about how we're going to be drawing cards besides our commander. We have Ambition's Cost and Ancient Craving. We draw 3 and lose 3 life. Next is Blood Tracker. This cares about +1/+1 counters, and that's great for our commander because we're already given that option to put +1/+1 counters on a target creature. Why not draw a card from it, make this guy a little bit bigger, deal some damage with it, happens to have flying? That is super good. Next is Compost. So this is a little bit different, but it's a great way to start drawing cards. Whenever a black card is put into an opponent's graveyard, you may draw a card. So if they happen to play a mono black deck, you get to draw a lot of cards, only for 2 mana as well. Next is Harmonize. For 2 and a green, draw 3 cards. How about Idol of Oblivion? We're making all these treasure tokens so we can draw a card whenever we have created a token this turn. Next is Painful Truths. If we have 3 different mana to put into this, we can draw 3 cards and lose 3 life. The last one is Viridian Revel. For 1 green, this is an enchantment that says whenever an artifact is put into an opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, so whenever they sacrifice their treasure tokens, you may draw a card. Well, let's say they go to cast a 3-mana spell with the 3 treasures that we just gave them. Not only are we putting a +1/+1 counter on a target creature and drawing a card, we're also drawing 3 cards from Viridian Revel. So a total of 4 cards, +1/+1 counter. This gets out of hand quickly. The last 2 cards I want to talk about are Disciple of the Vault and Marionette Master. So Disciple of the Vault is a 1/1 human cleric that says whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard from a battlefield, you may have target opponent lose 1 life. So if they decide to, again, sack their 3 treasures, cast something, activate whatever, we can deal 3 damage to one opponent or split that up. Very powerful. And Marionette Master specifically focuses on the artifacts that we are sacrificing or putting into the graveyard from the battlefield. We can have target opponent lose life equal to Marionette Master's power, and why this is so good is because it has Fabricate 3. When this enters the battlefield, we can decide to put 3 +1/+1 counters on it or create 3 colorless servos. I would really recommend putting the +1/+1 counters on it so it already has 4 power plus triggers we're getting from our commander that can potentially make it bigger, dealing more damage to our opponents. This works super well with the deck. So let's talk about the final price of this deck, which was very surprising to me because we have like $4 cards in here. The total was $49.78. That is blowing my mind right now because I really thought this was going to be over budget. And in my mind, budget is around $70 or less. That's what I prefer. And I'll have a link to the deck in the description down below. Also, if you'd like to check out more videos that I've done for patrons, check out this video right here if you'd love to get more inspiration for your EDH deck building. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.